Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel once again. This is Peter. If you haven't been here before, I talk about all things Thailand. Okay, before we start the video today, before I get into it, I just want to say a sincere thank you to everybody who's purchased my book on Amazon so far. If you don't know, I've got a book, 30 true stories that I've compiled into this book. There will be a second volume. So thanks to you guys for buying the book, whether it was paperback or Audible. Okay, so it's that time again. It's story time. I've got three very, very good stories for you today, guys. They're a bit longer than normal, hence why there's only three. And one of them, I don't want to give it away, but one of them is fantastic, and it comes with some very old photographs of Pattaya, and I'll give you an introduction to that when we get to that one. I'd also like to say thank you to all the guys and girls who have been sending in stories. I put out a shout out because I was running low. I've got a nice collection now. They're coming in nice and steady. So if you have sent me in a story and you're thinking he's taking a while to read this out or he's not reading it out, I will read it out. It's just I put it in a queuing system. If for whatever reason I'm not going to read your story, which is very, very rare, I will email you and give you the reason why. I wrote to somebody yesterday and just said, look, please put this through a spell check, capitalize it, space it out. He just hadn't edited it at all. He just wrote it. It would have taken me an hour and a half to edit. I just don't have the time. And as I said last week, I'm now time stamping the story. So if you get into a story on today's upload and you're getting a bit bored of it, it's not really for you, you can just look in the description and you can jump to the next story. Okay, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. Let's read the first of three.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I've never told anybody my story. You will understand why after reading. Firstly, I've never been to Thailand, never knew much about the country other than it being famous for Thai boxing, and that's it. I'm an American guy who has lived in the UK for the past 24 years. I have raised my children by myself over the last 10 years after the separation from my wife. I worked in construction and had a good job, but I had to reduce the days I work and look after my kids, getting them to school, cooking, all the stuff a working man isn't used to. We learned to adjust to do what we need to do. After a number of years, I felt like it was a good time to start looking for a girlfriend. My children were now growing up and leaving school. They were also becoming more independent, which left me more time to myself. I joined the usual online dating sites like Tinder and Badoo. It wasn't long until I was talking to a few ladies. One in particular, a Thai girl, I really liked, but to be honest, I didn't think I would be very appealing to her as I wasn't a bars or nightclub kind of guy. The other thing I should mention at this point in this story is that I had quite a few conversations with many other girls online. However, as soon as they found out I was a full-time father, the conversation dried up. The Thai girl I had met online was completely different. We chatted many times and I did enjoy talking to her. She had come to England with her daughter to live with her mother-in-law. She had an English guy who was her partner, but unfortunately he was killed in a motorcycle accident a few years previously. We eventually arranged to meet, but the night before I was due to meet her, I was so nervous I almost cancelled the meeting. However, I got myself together, bit the bullet and decided to go ahead with it. I was really very nervous, but when I got to the cafe that we had arranged to meet at, I seen her. She was absolutely stunning, a real beauty, and all my nerves seemed to melt away. We went inside and enjoyed a hot chocolate while getting to know each other. When we were leaving the cafe, I tried to give her a little kiss, but as I approached her, she bowed her head down so I couldn't kiss her. Now remember, I haven't been to Thailand, so I don't have the experience. I now know that Thai people do not show emotion in public. A public kiss is definitely a no-no. Lesson learned, and no real harm done. We walked around together for a bit and we talked about all sorts of things. Our kids, Thailand, the UK, we were getting on really well now. I was playing the real gentleman. I really didn't want to blow it on the first meeting. We eventually had to go our separate ways as she had to pick up her daughter from school, but I thought it had gone quite well and she agreed to meet me once again. I joked with her and I told her there must be many guys online bidding for your affection. She told me yes, there are plenty of guys who contact her, but she liked me. She went on to tell me that she was attracted to me because she thought I was serious because I had raised my children by myself. She wasn't looking for a playboy type, and I think she was looking for some stability in her life. She also told me she hadn't been on a date since her husband had died. She promised me that she wasn't going to meet anybody else from the dating sites, as she said she liked me. I was very much encouraged by what she was saying. Obviously, I was happy at this point. We parted, and that evening I texted her. I told her how good I felt on our date and I really liked her. She said the same and told me that she had been thinking about me all day. I asked again, are you sure? Because if you really like me, I feel the same about you. I will delete the dating apps from my phone. Yes, she said, straight away. I really want that. I couldn't believe it. She was so beautiful. How can I explain it? She had a great body with everything in proportion, even a little bigger where you like things to be a little bigger. 2 days later, we met again. She went on to tell me that she was sorry she didn't kiss me at our first meeting and explained that in Thai culture, we don't do that. I told her I fully understand, and that was the end of that. We then went to a local park for a walk together. The park was fairly quiet and we enjoyed each other's company as we walked along. We eventually ended up on a little bridge over a stream. We stopped, looked at each other, and I couldn't resist. I went to kiss her again, and this time there was no one around. She let me kiss her. Not only did she let me kiss her, but it developed into a very passionate long kiss. This went on for several minutes. I couldn't keep my hands off her, and she also seemed to enjoy it. We decided to go back to her place, and it didn't take long until we had our first intimate session together. Afterwards, she told me she was ashamed of herself and it shouldn't have happened. I told her, look, if we both like each other, why not? We're not children. She said it shouldn't have happened. You must think I'm a bad girl. She said to me, look, my mother-in-law must never find out about this. I will be so ashamed if she does. Please promise me you will never say anything to her, to which obviously I agreed. She again told me that she hadn't been with a guy since her husband died and went on to tell me that I was only the third guy she had ever been with in her life. I found this pretty hard to believe, but then again, I thought maybe that's how the Thai culture is. We started dating full time and became an item. I was juggling time between work, my kids and her. I was really happy. She told me that she loved me. She cooked me Thai food, which I really enjoyed. She would also give me a traditional Thai massage. I had never experienced a woman like this in my life. When we were out together, a lot of guys would look at her, but when they did, she would link her arm through mine to show them that I was her man. She tried to teach me about Thailand, what a wonderful country it was, and I thought to myself, I would love to visit one day. She also went on to explain that there is a lot of poverty in the countryside, which I felt sorry about. She told me that her mother didn't even have a fridge. I said, I'll buy your mother a fridge. How much would she need to buy a fridge in Thailand? £200 was her reply. The next day, I sent the money to her mother in Thailand. My girlfriend was so happy. She told me this will make such a big difference to my mother. I literally felt so good that I'd helped her mother and made her happy. But she then went on to suggest I set up a regular monthly payments to help her mother, who was struggling back home. I was in love. How could I say no? I set up a monthly transfer of 3,500 baht a month. That's about £85 or $100. Apparently, her brother had bought a small plot of land for his mother and suggested that we help build a little house for her on this land. Now remember, I was already sending 3,500 baht a month. I said to her, how much would your brother need to build a house? She said, only £1,500, it would help a lot. I reluctantly agreed. I just wanted her to be happy. Things were now going great and everybody was happy. She would call her family in Thailand every Sunday morning, and sometimes they would call her. I could hear the conversation from both ends, so although I could not speak Thai, I knew it was a happy conversation from their tones. On one of these Sunday morning calls, I noticed that the conversation didn't seem as happy as usual. When they were done talking to each other, I asked my girlfriend what was wrong. She said they had run out of money and the house was only half built. Building materials had shot up in price and her brother hadn't allowed for the electricity and the water to be installed. She asked me again if I could help towards the cost of the house. I said, look, I've got my own family, my own expenses. and I look after you. I'm not rich, you know that. I can't keep sending money, but I'll try to help out, but I can only give you £500 this time. She sent the £500 to her family and everybody was happy again, including my girlfriend. It didn't take long until once again she wanted more money to go towards the house, which wasn't yet complete. I told her straight, I said, no, that's it. I've done my part. If your brother doesn't have enough money to finish a house, that's his problem, not mine. A few weeks later, she asked me for £3,000 to renew her visa. I said, are you crazy? £300? She said, yes, I can get it quickly with money. I said, no way, I'm not giving you all that money. You can go along and fill in an application form like everybody else. By now, I was getting pretty fed up with her constant requests for money. She then started to try and joke and ask me how much money I had in my secret bank account that she didn't know about. I told her again, are you crazy? I don't have such a bank account. She laughed and said, no, I'm sure you have a secret bank account. Look, we could go and live in Thailand, build a house, buy some land, much better life than here. It was summertime and we were meeting every other day and spending weekends together. Every time we met, she looked stunning, little shorts, skirts, low tops, and all the time shown everyone that I was her man. I noticed a tattoo on her shoulder. I asked what it was and she said to me, I got it done in Bangkok. It was a butterfly. At the time it was trendy when she worked at the restaurant. That's cool, I said. This relationship was beginning to take a strain on me. It was always about her daughter and her family back home. I found it difficult to say no to her as I wanted to make her happy. In the back of my mind, I always thought I should be more careful with money as I have my own family, but I said it was very difficult to resist. She went out shopping one day alone and forgot to take her mobile phone with her. I had seen her unlock it, but I didn't tell her I knew how to do this. So when she was out, I started to scroll through her messages and discovered she had been speaking to another guy before me. So much for only 3 guys in her life. I was hurt by this, but thought, well, this is real life, and I let it go. However, as I dug deeper into the phone, I discovered messages from even more guys and some sexy photos that she had been sending them. I thought to myself, well, I'm no saint. I really need to keep an eye on her. Let's see how this develops. She doesn't know that I know. Perhaps this all took place before she met me, and now that she is in a steady relationship, she doesn't need to do this. I continued to snoop around and I found a bottle of tablets hidden in her underwear drawer. I didn't recognize the name on the bottle, so I googled the name of the medicine. What I discovered turned me as white as a sheet. She was taking the same medication that people with HIV would take. I couldn't believe it. I checked again and again, there was no mistake. It looked like my girlfriend was HIV positive. I couldn't believe what I just discovered. I honestly thought I was having a bad dream. We had been having unprotected sex several times a day. I nearly had a mental breakdown right there and then. Here I was with this beautiful Asian girl who I deeply loved, and now this. When she got home, I was very calm. I asked her to sit down next to me. I produced the bottle and simply asked, "What are these for?" She broke down and started to cry hysterically. I couldn't get any sense out of her for about 15 minutes. When she looked at me and she said, "Yes, I'm HIV positive. I'm so sorry. I caught this from my first boyfriend and didn't discover it until I had my daughter. My English husband didn't catch it." It was all starting to come together now. I was starting to understand this girl. All the time she had been asking me for money. I don't believe she bought her mother a new fridge, and I certainly know that the £1,500 also went to her alone. She said to me, "Why don't you take a test?" She went on to tell me that she didn't want to deceive me. She just wanted a normal boyfriend and a normal life. I went crazy at her and I told her, "You can't get into a relationship and not tell your partner that you're infected like this. This is so wrong on so many levels." A few days later, I went for a test. I got the results back about a week later. Luckily, I was negative. I was so happy about this, but inside I was hurting. I still love this girl. Love is not like a tap that you can simply turn off. I went round to her house and I told her I was negative. She was so happy and said, "You see, I knew you wouldn't test positive." We didn't see each other for about 6 weeks, but I really missed her. We stayed together for a little while after this, but just as friends, because as I said, I really loved this girl and I found it so hard to part with her, even with everything that had happened. The problem was that I could now see through her. I knew about her lies. She continued to try and extract money from me, which I didn't give her. Deep down, the love I had for her started to fade. I went for a second test and again the results were negative, which I'm really happy about. My heart goes out to anybody who has caught this terrible disease. Although I understand why my girlfriend did not tell me that she was positive, I cannot accept this and I cannot forgive her for allowing me to have unprotected sex with her. She still lives in the UK and only about 30 miles away from where I live. I really hope I never bump into her again and I just want to put this experience behind me. I would have never thought about travelling to Thailand, but I hope to one day. Thanks for reading out my story. Wow, what a story, eh? It sounds like this guy really dodged a bullet, but what I'm thinking about as I was reading that, I'm thinking she's not going to let it be, is she? She's not going to just go back to Thailand. She's going to stay in the UK. Who's next? There's going to be another guy comes along, isn't there? Maybe he isn't so lucky. Okay, let's jump straight into number 2. In early 2020, I planned to make my third trip to Thailand as to try my luck at finding love again with a beautiful Thai lady after being unsuccessful on my first 2 visits. I like to spend 2 months leading up to my arrival working the dating sites in order to get to know a lady as well as possible before I arrive. It was about 1 month before going to Thailand that I met a lady that really stood out and seemed to tick all the boxes. I made all the routine checks before taking her seriously, like what work she does, what she was looking for in a relationship, and anything else I could throw at her. All her answers checked out. I arrived in Bangkok and checked into my hotel. Not long after checking in, she texts me saying that she is looking for me at the BTS station near my hotel and is ready to meet me. I found her there and she looked amazing. Things were starting to get exciting now. It all looked great so far as long as there are no catches, because I was still feeling that this all seemed too easy and too good to be true. We spent every day and night together in both Bangkok and Pattaya for 4 days. Her company was great for the most part. The bedroom aerobics were the best I'd ever had and she really did try and treat me like a VIP. On occasions her mood would change suddenly and she began to become incredibly jealous that I might be texting other Thai ladies at the same time I was with her. I could not understand her anxiety when I was with her every day. These jealous outbursts and episodes gave me the impression that she was a very loyal person and demands the utmost loyalty from me too, or this was the explanation I came up with to make sense of it all. During the course of the 2 weeks together, there were a few red flags that told me that there is more to the story than meets the eye. Because I was having such a good time, I chose to ignore any red flags and continued enjoying my time with her. The red flags were that one day in Bangkok she needed to go into work at her office for the day. Apparently they really needed her that day and she told me that she had taken too many days off already spending time with me. It wasn't the fact that she left me alone for the whole day that worried me, but it was that she didn't answer any of my calls all day until about 7 p.m. And that was the first time she did that since I first met her online. I could tell that there was something more to this because it's unlikely that she was so busy that she couldn't answer one phone call all day. The other concern was that she didn't want to take me where she lives in Bangkok and meet her mother, which I really wanted to do. I was getting serious about her by the end of the trip and I wanted to make sure that she is not hiding anything and this is really the real deal. She never asked for any money for anything the whole time. In fact, she offered to pay for things like meals, transportation, etc. on occasions, which I found to be very impressive. I planned to give her some money on my last day if things continued like this as I was having fun. I returned to Australia where we spent every day for 2 years messaging and calling each other. It was mostly her calling me and asking me what I was doing and who I was doing it with. We could not visit each other during all this time because of the travel bans. She spent 2 years telling me how committed she was to me and that she doesn't want to meet any other men and only wants me forever. She was also incredibly jealous and would continue having jealous episodes where her mood would turn to a total crazy person that had lost control of her temper. She would calm right down the next day and continue being her normal self as if nothing had happened. Her behaviour was very unusual to me, and I couldn't work out if it was real or a big act. Early this year, I began telling her that I was planning to visit her again soon as the restrictions were lifted. Over the next few weeks, her communication became less and less, which I could tell was not like her and knew something was up. I eventually got so fed up with her moody outbursts and her accusations of me cheating on her that I decided to stop replying to all of her messages for a while until she settles down. She eventually stopped messaging me too. Knowing her for over 2 years, I knew that something was going on behind the scenes. It was unlike her to stop messaging me just because I stopped messaging her for a while. I was about to find out why. It had only been about 2 weeks after that we had stopped communicating, and the truth and explanation to all this eventually came out. She began posting photos of her and an older man together. She was wearing some very expensive looking designer clothes that I had never seen her wearing in all the time she was with me. When I saw these things, I blocked her because I could clearly see she had moved on with another man. I could still check on any posts that she was uploading, including photographs. Over the next few months, she continued posting photo after photo of herself travelling across Europe, now staying in the UK with this older rich man. She has photos of driving in his very expensive car, staying at the most luxurious 5-star hotels, shopping for expensive clothes and fine wine, and dining at high-end venues. This old man obviously looks very well off and looks like he is spending a fortune on her. When I look back at everything and connect all the dots, I'm under the impression that she had known this older man longer than she had been with me. She was actually cheating on him with me and not the other way around. I think she had him as a sugar daddy for a very long time, but doesn't get to be with him all the time. So she was looking to fill the gaps with a bit of extra entertainment with someone else while he runs his business in the UK. Her plan all along was to get back with him as soon as the airports were open, and he takes her on another all-out spending spree that lasts for months at a time. This was a fake relationship I was in, but it didn't really cost me anything except for a sense of betrayal and total disappointment that she had been hiding such a big thing from me for so long. This relationship was never about getting money from me because she knew I was not the right guy for that. It was about having a younger man at the same time as a sugar daddy that she already had in the bag. So much for thinking that I can meet a genuine lady if I just avoid dating bar girls. There we go, another one. Yeah, you got to be careful, haven't you? What can you do? The thing is there's nothing he could have done to stop her doing what she was doing, but it's just another crash and burn story, isn't it? Okay, look, the next story is absolutely fantastic. This is the last of the 3, and I've purposely left this one to be the last story because when I read the last 2 stories, especially the first one, I thought people are going to watch this and the rest of the day is going to be depressing for them. So I'm ending up with a real nice story. This isn't about any bar girls or crash and burn. This is a second story sent in by an ex-Navy man, an American guy. He told a story on this channel probably about 6 months ago, just about his times with his friend in Pattaya in the real old days, early 80s. Now, this is a follow-up. If you're one of those guys who listens to the stories but you don't watch me on screen, you're either tinkering with your car or you're doing a bit of housework for the wife, whatever, at the end of this story you will want to look at this upload because there's some fantastic old pictures that were taken on a regular camera in the 80s in Pattaya, and if you're a regular traveler to Thailand, they should be very, very interesting to you. So this is a great story, and it's just about their times in Thailand and Pattaya, and I think you're going to enjoy this one. So this trip begins in August 1985. Rick and I were making our second trip to Thailand after being there in August 1984. Departure for the trip this time was from Manila, still under the Marcos rule, and it was a noon departure. Manila was a steamy, hot, humid place. Near the airport, our driver had to stop in heavy traffic and 2 men approached our vehicle. This was unsettling. One man was leading the other by the hand. Our driver was indifferent and I took my cues from him and Rick, who both shook their heads at the man. Rick explained that even though there were homeless and struggling people throughout Asia, in 1985, that the Philippines was the only place where they would walk blind people up to the car to beg. So starts the adventure. The airport was a sweltering crowded place, but soon we were boarded on an Air France jet bound for Dong Muang Airport in Bangkok. The flight was nearly empty and the French seated us in an exclusive section of the aircraft, the upper deck. I've never sat there before or after. We were told that this leg of the flight was not crowded, but the leg from Bangkok to Paris would be much fuller. Arriving in Bangkok after a 3-hour flight put us in country in the middle of the day and not jet lagged like the traditional flights from the USA or Europe to Bangkok. I can say that flying at this hour is far superior than taking the 12 to 15-hour flight. We were still alert and ready to hit Pattaya. As this was our second trip in a year, I can say for sure that if you've ever been to Thailand once, then the second trip is much better. Knowing the ropes from the airport to the highways to dealing with transports, tuk-tuks, BART buses, taxis, etc., to handling the hotels and the scammers, and of course dealing with the local culture and people is much easier and rewarding. After a cloudy drive to Pattaya, we arrived at the PK Villa Hotel, a modest yet clean and comfortable hotel. It was located where the Avani property is today. Back in 1985, the area of Beach Road was not nearly as built up or as congested as today, and the PK was so simple and a good room was only about $30 US a night. Within an hour, we were able to hit the town. I don't recall seeing any freelancers on Beach Road back then. As I said, going back a second time gave us valuable reference points and people. We noticed the new Pizza Hut restaurant on Beach Road. Very unusual to see that in Asia at the time. We did eat there and it was good, reasonably priced, not quite like the Pizza Hut that is in Pattaya today, but in the same location. We noticed in 1985 that Pattaya had a lot of Middle Eastern visitors. There were many Saudis, Kuwaitis and others, often wearing the traditional garments and headpieces. This was not like anything we had seen in the Philippines or Korea. We had no conflicts with anybody, but it was just unusual to see. Anyway, the first night out involved us seeing the people and places we saw the previous year. That was a fantastic night. You see, there were no cell phones or line apps or ways to keep in contact, except snail mail and letter to and from Thailand, very rare. So every reunion with the ladies in the bars was a celebration, and it was not to be missed. It all seemed so genuine. Pattaya was not so businesslike as it is now. At the end of the night, we got back to the PK Villa Hotel. We had rooms side by side on the second floor with a window facing the pool. I walked into my room and had a visitor. It was after midnight, and when I turned on the light, I saw a spider the size of my hand on the wall, a black spider with legs as long as my fingers. I shouted for Rick to come in quickly as I didn't want to take my eyes off the spider in case it moved, or worse yet, it jumped. Rick came in and shrugged. Oh, a tarantula. That was reassuring. It really was what is called a cane spider. Back then, these areas of Pattaya weren't overbuilt and there was some wildlife around still. They say that spiders have poor vision. I don't think they do. This large spider could see us lining up swinging at him and moved at just the right time to escape. But with two of us trying to kill it with our size 12 shoes, the spider couldn't escape. We didn't think for 1 second of what a good Buddhist might do and just got the spider out of the room. After we had sufficiently killed the spider once or twice, we whisked it out of the room, and remember that we were pretty drunk and we went to bed in our separate rooms. The next morning outside of my door was a mountain of ants climbing over and feasting on this dead spider. We hadn't thought of this and it was tough to look at with a hangover. Fortunately, we did not see any other visitors like this during our stay. During this visit, we were bound and determined to do at least some fine dining and try a few things we didn't try the previous year. The Soy Diamond with the carousel was still the busy area for beer bars and go-go's. In the back of Soy Diamond in the bottom of the hotel was a Thai soapy massage. Now, we had generally been intimidated by this place, as the first time we entered previously we were unshaven, half drunk and grisly, and had a drink while looking at beautiful ladies in ballroom dresses. We just were not up to this experience a year before, but this time we took our chances and tried the experience. Well, it certainly was worth it, and I recall that Rick had a lady with a face that would be hard to forget. Quite beautiful. So later that night, at about 12:30 a.m, Rick told me we needed to be at a certain beer bar that had comfortable seating outside. We went there, and to my surprise, I realised that Rick had cracked the code in how to get the soapy massage lady to meet him outside of her work. In jeans, she looked much different, yet still a beauty, and this enhanced the visit. In those days, hotel security was very lax, and after that, Rick gave the lady a key and she would come over after the massage place closed at midnight. We never had anything stolen or any problems, just lovely company. I've wondered if this is possible now to casually meet a soapy worker off duty. During our visit, the jet ski boat scams were going in earnest and were suddenly stopped completely by the authorities. We had heard that a Q80 visitor had ridden one of these jet skis and crashed to his death down near where the Pattaya Beer Garden is now. So we didn't try jet skiing, but we did hire a private speedboat to take us on a tour of the bay, and that was a fantastic idea, which I highly recommend. The baht rate was 23.5 to $1, but the prices in the bars varied randomly. One bar would be 140 baht for 2 beers, another 146 baht, another 155 baht, and so on. The record we paid was 188 baht for 2 beers, but the point is the pricing was completely random and we never actually saw any price lists, just bills brought to our bill cups. We did not get scammed in any way going out, ever, that we know of, not even an effort to scam us. One problem with being familiar with the ladies from the previous year is you begin to trust them, which is not wise. Rick learnt this the hard way when one beautiful lady took us over to a food cart vendor. I refused to eat anything, but Rick let her playfully feed him a noodle from a dish she ordered. Well, his face quickly turned bright red, and after he was done choking, he gasped to me that the noodles burnt from his lips all the way down his system to his stomach. The lady was slurping them down as if they were a gift from heaven. There was a fine seafood restaurant that had opened in 1984-85, a beautiful wooden panelled place with a fancy seafood menu. My memory was that it was in the vicinity of where Soi 13 or Soi post office is today. We went in and looked through the extensive menu. Rick ordered the fancy seafood platter, but for some reason I opted for the steak out of intuition. What happened was that I got a nice tasty small steak, an ideal meal if you want to go out drinking later without feeling full. Rick was brought out a plate full of shells. Well, I was able to eat quickly, but Rick was labouring. This meal occurred after 3 or 4 days in Pattaya and drinking nightly. My throat had gotten raspy and it was just too much party action, which caused me fits of coughing. I excused myself, went into a nice bathroom and proceeded to cough up shamelessly. When I came out finally, Rick had tired of breaking open the shells, pushed them away saying this is just too much work. He told me we would have to get out of here now. I said why? He said that the walls were paper thin in this restaurant and every customer heard me coughing up and they all are thinking that I got sick from the food I've eaten. I didn't know if that was true, but we slipped out embarrassed. Another lesson learned about dining out in Pattaya. Our hotel, the PK, had something else we didn't expect. There were a group of ladies that would gather by the hotel swimming pool in the afternoon. 4, 5 or 6 of them. Sometimes they'd swim, sometimes not. We could see them out of our window. We tried to go out and join them and that worked quite well. They were friendly and just hung out there with us. We could see them out of the room window and just go outside when they were there. We found out that at least a couple of them worked in beer bars. Not sure of the others, but it really added to the fun of the trip. We never asked if they were sponsored or how they were allowed to use a pool, but like I said, things were much more lax back then. The trip back to Bangkok from Pattaya was a slow one as we got behind a truck carrying pigs and couldn't pass for an hour. The sad looking and smelly pigs in cages had their ears flopping at each bump in the road. Once in Bangkok, we found that late August could find heavy rain and the only dry places were the bars, and soon we were in Pat Pong. We stayed at the hotel we learned about from the last trip. If you did not experience Pat Pong in the 80s, you really did miss out. Prices were even lower than Pattaya and the selection of companies seemed unlimited there. Clubs were hopping and we knew the ropes on finding the right places to go with shows to see and didn't waste valuable party time. One thing we discovered was that despite the unlimited selection of ladies, it was possible to choose wrong. This trip was where we found our first dud of a companion, and to be polite, we had to ask her to leave despite her good looks. Up until then, we had a perfect record of finding great companions. The trip out of Thailand was uneventful, and in summary, this was in many ways more meaningful than the trip in 1984. This trip certainly had us hooked on the land of smiles. We had so many new friends and memories and saw many more doors open. We could communicate much better, and so many things from the food to the ambience made Thailand a place we always wanted to come back to. A few things I'll tell you about from the trip. 1. Chairs. We believe that Thailand had a ministry for uncomfortable chairs. We never saw a place, whether in a hotel lobby, a hotel room, the airport, any waiting area, where there were this many uncomfortable chairs. Sometimes they would put these chairs in places where people had to sit, like the bus stop. Those chairs were made like dustpans, angled where your butt would slide down in a few seconds. Some bar stools were set up to suck your butt in and make it very difficult to get out of. Many chairs were purely decorative, not for sitting in. Back support just didn't exist back then. 2. The ladies in 1985 with no cell phones were more personal and contacts were nearly impossible to keep. It cannot be understated, 1 year is a long time in the life of a bar girl. You will see a major change after a year. Some of them age a lot, some mature a lot, some gain weight. Fortunately, we don't ever change. Also in Thailand, we saw a lot of females driving motor scooters, which was refreshing. In the Philippines and Korea, this was not the case. Also in 1985, ladies were not nearly as aggressive towards customers as in 2012. In fact, it is fair to say that most of them were shy and perhaps humble. In my opinion, it is much more sensible to keep relationships with the ladies as transactional only. We knew that we didn't know nearly enough about their culture to even think of anything beyond that. I truly believe that most of the train wreck relationships between Thais and Westerners are caused by a sincere lack of understanding and not establishing expectations across the culture barriers. We knew and met some nice Thai ladies during the trip, but we also knew better than to even try to make things work with a nice lady. Ladies' drinks were just not hustled with the rigour of today. While we bought some of them, we really didn't have to buy many due to the ambience of unoccupied ladies. Ladies just did not smoke cigarettes or sport tattoos, and I don't recall heavy-set ladies or men anywhere. Nowadays in Thailand has a problem with obesity, as COVID has shown. 3. The music in 1985, they were playing the 1984 release of Murray Head's One Night in Bangkok over and over again and in every bar. 4. Language. The Thai tonal language is near impossible for a beginning. Mayao was about the only word of value we learnt, roughly meaning I don't know what or I don't like, good for shoeing vendors. 5. Finally, photos back in 1985. When you took photos with the standard Instamatic type cameras, you had to go into a 1-hour photo studio in Pattaya and they would do a nice development in about 4 hours and provided you a nice Pattaya photo booklet for your memories. These booklets were great, easy to carry. You could get away with taking a few photos inside the clubs back then, but depending on the situation. After the 1985 trip, the next trip to Thailand would be in 1989. A much different experience for the next story. Well, personally, I can't wait till he sends that in, and I've actually written him an email and say, look, get it sent in as quick as you can. But before I do any more talking, let's have a look at his photographs. A lot of the things he was talking about in this story are in these photographs. So have a look at these. I think you'll enjoy these. They were great, weren't they? It's very, very difficult to come across old photographs because it's not like nowadays where everybody carries a phone and they're snapping everywhere they go, including me. You had to carry a camera and like the guy says, you had to get the film developed. But I like the, I don't know if you noticed that, the line where he says they advertised 1 hour development, but it took them 4 hours. Typical, isn't it? Okay, thanks for listening to my stories again. Don't forget, guys, if you like these stories, my book is on Amazon. You can actually go on there and there are samples of the stories. You don't just have to make a decision there and then. There is a link in the description. But once again, thanks for putting up with me again today, and I'll see you all real soon.